Hello there, welcome to the Saroid channel wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you, and sending you a great big hug. I hope you're feeling great. I'm doing very well, thank you very much, and our story is incredibly exciting. So before we start, don't forget to go and get yourself a lovely hot cup of cocoa, and for those of you that have brought me a coffee, I just appreciate it so very much. It's so very thoughtful of you. But before we continue, let me remind you where we actually are in the story. Basically, we have a young man who's about 25 years old. He's had a real struggle living in New York, and he's been offered this fantastic job due to an advertisement he found in a post office written on a pink stock card for an advertisement to be a groundskeeper for a property about an hour and a half out of New York in a rural area, I believe. And this place used to be a very grand house where they used to host fabulous parties, but unfortunately the house has descended into rampant decay. But now Marcus has been given this fantastic opportunity to fix the place up, well, to get the grounds into some kind of order. But as he's receiving a lift to the manor by a very kind gentleman by the name of Edward Kingston, he is learning quite a few unsettling things about the place. So let's continue with our story. The couple recently began to hear a song being sung in the woods, always at night, in a foreign language. Every night they would look at each other and say, well, at least Monica would say, "What the hell was that, Philip?" Philip O'Rourke would answer and say, "God only knows, but I'm not about to find out what that is." By this time, Monica O'Rourke, who was now in charge of all the washing, because the 3 servant girls that still remained in her employ had failed to do a satisfactory job. So Mrs. O'Rourke took over. She was very particular and fastidious about how she liked things to be done. She certainly had the attitude that if you don't like the way something is done, then do it yourself. And so the washing became her full-time responsibility. Every time Monica O'Rourke hung the washing on the line, she absolutely knew without a shadow of a doubt that she was being watched. Shortly after she hung the washing up, items of her clothing would mysteriously go walkabout from the washing line, such as silk slips, pantyhose, cotton tops, and skirts. At first she was maddened by all this, wondering where the hell her washing had got to. But on doing a frantic search of the grounds on the property, she found a rather enigmatic, curious trail of stones leading directly into the woods, so she decided to follow them, and stumbled across her select items of washing, dangling from low-hung tree branches in the grove, and of course on the occasional bush. The clothes were not damaged, nor were they soiled in any way, but had obviously been on quite the adventure. On many occasions Mrs. O'Rourke had to go and collect her washings like this from the woods, where she'd follow again another trail of stones that would lead to where her washing was hiding. It became like a game of hide-and-seek for her. She noticed that only her clothes were targeted, for this game, so to speak. As it would seem, her husband's and children's clothes remained untouched, hanging on the washing line to dry. They were never targeted. She had a sense the creature she had seen at the laundry room, peering in at her through mischievous yellow eyes, was toying with her. She claimed that when she went to retrieve her washing, splayed across bushes and God knows where else, she'd hear an amused chuckle, as if something was laughing at her. She knew she was being watched, but she kept these remarkably unique experiences to herself, for she knew how cynical a man her husband Philip could be. Finally, she did come clean and tell him what was happening with her washing, when Philip discovered a pathway of stones leading into the woods and demanded to know what the kids were playing at, as he thought it was one of their games, and wasn't desperately amused by it. I guess by then Monica felt compelled to tell Philip the truth. She didn't want her children being blamed for something they invariably did not do. Her rather bizarre story left her bewildered husband extremely confounded. He made a thorough search of the woodgrove with a rifle in his hands during the daylight hours, but saw nothing was amiss, although he did say he had an ominous feeling that something was watching him. One night Philip O'Rourke had become increasingly frustrated by the strange voice singing in the woods, because they heard it again. Hakinatilamp, Akilatasi, Haminatolo. And even though he had previously insisted he would never go out in the dead of night to check it out, it's amazing how bold you can become after enjoying a tipple or two. I hasten to say that his wife Monica rather suspected the smiling face with the yellow eyes that she'd often seen staring at her through the laundry window was the owner of the voice that was singing at night. Her husband was consumed with a bold assertiveness after having a couple of drinks, so he decided to find the source of the singing. Monica O'Rourke believed that a couple of shots of alcohol had given her husband Philip a fake sense of confidence, which he would not doubtlessly have had he been stone-cold sober. That's drink for you, though, isn't it? It can give you what they call Dutch courage. Naturally, Monica O'Rourke was alarmed her husband was going to investigate the strange singing from the woods, and discouraged him not to go, feeling very apprehensive about her husband's impulsive urge to suddenly investigate, which became like an itch he suddenly wanted to scratch. From what Cole Armstrong told me about Philip O'Rourke, despite being an honourable man, he had flaws to his character, and one of them, I'm afraid to say, was that by nature he was mulishly stubborn, and he refused to listen to his wife's seasoned advice whenever it was given to him. On the contrary, the more she urged him to please not go into the woods, the more determined he would ultimately become to do just that. This, I suspect, was due to a rather rebellious, cantankerous side to his character that did not serve his very best interests, for people like that can so easily find themselves caught up in trouble, like a fly entangled in a spider's web. It would seem Philip O'Rourke boldly sashayed into the woods that night, with a confident swagger, according to his wife Monica, that is. She nervously watched him from behind the twitching curtains in the living room. You can only imagine what was going on in that poor woman's mind at the time. I suspect she didn't want any harm to come to the creature that she had encountered, who she strongly suspected was responsible for the nightly singing. She did confess to her husband Philip she always believed the creature that she'd seen in the laundry-room window was harmless, and was probably him singing in the woods, and to please leave him well alone. But Philip O'Rourke's obstinacy appeared to have grown legs of its own. This was a night of a full moon, and let's just say Philip O'Rourke, armed with his rifle and torch, went marching into the woodgrove like a man going off to war in pursuit of a deadly enemy that he doggedly intended to take down and destroy. It was here, on searching for the source of the bizarre singing, the family appeared to keep hearing, that Philip O'Rourke had an unorthodox cryptic encounter of his own, with the same gargantuan creature his wife had often seen at the laundry-room window. He said the creature was humongous in size, but very human-like, covered in long, dark, flowing hair. Indeed, I am told he was so taken aback by this brief, outlandish encounter that for a second he was so caught off guard and could not believe what he was seeing. He even wondered if he might possibly be dreaming. The creature seemed equally as startled to run into the likes of Philip O'Rourke at the dead of night. The creature stared at him and said, "Ancolotina, hakika swana," which translated into his head as, "Yes, I'm real. Don't look so surprised about it." It was as if the creature had read Philip's mind. The creature simply walked away through the woods, not even glancing over his ponderous shoulders once to give Philip O'Rourke a second glance. Philip O'Rourke claimed that any thoughts of using his rifle on this occasion had passed him by, but in hindsight he regretted that decision, and wished he'd pulled the trigger on the hairy humanoid. He was feeling absolutely convinced that this wild man of sorts was obviously imposing a substantial threat to his family, as it had wilfully stolen his wife's washing from the line and put it around the woods. That made him as mad as hell. From what I gather, the man had absolutely no sense of humour, and felt his wife Monica was being targeted by the creature. Ostensibly, Monica told him to leave the creature be. She said that the man-like beast intended them no harm. If that were indeed the case, she assured Philip that the creature would likely have harmed the family a long time ago. She said the little incidents with the washing was the creature's way of messing around with her as a joke. She advised her husband not to antagonize the creature, should he ever encounter the creature in the woods again, and never to fire at it, as no good could come from such a fruitless endeavour. She said she'd grown rather fond and amused by the games the creature played on her, which she thought were rather playful and sweet. Philip O'Rourke would not listen to a word his wife said. He told her he meant to kill the creature, whether she liked it or not. And Monica told him that if he did such a foolish thing, he might very well live to regret such a decision. If this creature is approached by you, and you intend to harm it, I feel very sorry for you, Philip, because you're going to be in serious trouble. You're putting yourself in harm's way, she insisted, and it might not end well for all of us. I think the creature is completely harmless. I'm sorry, but I do. I can tell by the eyes that it's actually a kind creature. But if he realizes you intend to blow his head off, I don't think he's going to remain harmless. If you whack a domesticated dog too many times, he might come back to bite you, but it doesn't change the fact that the dog is domesticated. But it knows how to stand up for itself. The creature, I'm sure, is much the same. Please, I beg you, Philip, don't do anything stupid. Allow the creature to coexist with the rest of our family. He's not doing any harm to anyone. He's obviously incredibly intelligent, and he's got a sense of humour. And what's wrong with that? He enjoys playing games with me. So what? There's nothing sinister about any of this, I can assure you of that. You stupid woman, Mr. O'Rourke scolded his wife. Haven't you heard a single word I've just said? Or are you really completely tone-deaf and dumb? The man-like creature I encountered in the woods was intimidating, incredibly big. He imposes a grave threat to our family. You think it's all fun and games, don't you, Monica? Just because the creature puts lines of stones for you to follow to lead you to your washing. Can't you see? He's making a mockery of all of us. Even if he didn't attack me in the woods that evening, how do we know he will remain indifferent towards us? Long terms, things can dramatically change, can they not? The creature is stealing your washing, hanging it around the wood grove as a joke, and you say he's not harming us? Are you absolutely insane? He's interfering in our lives, woman. Don't you get it? And I, for one, cannot and will not tolerate that. I'm sorry, but I just won't. I need to put my foot down here on this. I'm sorry if you've got attached to this thing, God knows why, but that thing is going to go, if I have any say in this matter. Oh, goodness gracious, Philip, listen to yourself. Don't be so foolish. Be like what? What are you accusing me of, Monica? Well, being so dogmatic, so opinionated about things that you know absolutely nothing about. Just let the creature be. He's never harmed any of us. Need I remind you, Monica, that this creature initially has spied on 3 of our servant girls through the window of the laundry room. That's why they all handed in their notices, because they were so affrighted by this thing. It's a botheration and an annoyance, if anything else. He's like a damn mosquito that you need to swat away. I can't believe that none of this is a botheration to you. You saw him looking at you through the laundry room window on several occasions, and you have the blatant audacity to nonchalantly wave your hands around in the air as if it's no big deal. What if this creature comes after one of our boys, Monica? Have you thought about that for a second? You're their mother, for God's sake. It's your responsibility to take care of our children, as it is mine. If anything were to happen to them, their blood would be on your hands. Oh, listen to yourself. Don't be ridiculous, Philip. You're being ever so dramatic. I'm a naturally protective mother, and if I remotely suspected for a single second that this hairy man-like creature intended to hurt our children, I would be the first one to actively encourage you to go after him with all guns blazing. In fact, I would demand that of you, and wouldn't expect anything less. You do surprise me saying that, Monica. You're being incredibly nonchalant about all of this. That's because I've got very good instincts about things. I'm telling you, Philip, the creature is benevolent. But let me warn you, If you mess around with him, he may not remain that way. Need I remind you, our children are always playing out in the woods, and nothing bad or nefarious has ever happened to them. Not once. Never have they been unduly alarmed by anything. You yourself encountered the creature in the woods who told you yes, he was real and to get over it. I want to tell you, Philip, if he'd wanted to hurt you, he had plenty of opportunity to do so, but he didn't, did he? That should tell you he imposes no threat. Don't be ridiculous. Of course the creature imposes a threat. Well, I disagree on that, Philip. If he reads your mind, it means he's intelligent. But maybe he's just curious and interested in our family. He enjoys playing tricks on me with the washing. When I go and collect my washing from the woods, I hear him laughing. It's a game for him, a harmless game. Just like the kids enjoy playing jokes on me. He's harmless, love, as I keep repeating over and over again. But you simply refuse to listen to a single word I say. That's because nothing you say, love, makes any bloody sense at all. You're talking absolute nonsense. Oh, you are being crazy, Philip. What I'm saying does make sense. You know what your problem is, Philip. You're too damned obstinate for your own good. If you want my salient advice, which I'm sure you don't, but I'm going to say it anyway, whether you like it or not, I would not antagonize the creature with a weapon if I were you. And I would hate you to attempt to kill him. I mean, what has he ever done to you? I can't believe we're having this foolhardy, ridiculous conversation, love. You're the one that has clearly lost your marbles, not me. What has he done? I'll tell you what he's done. He's been going after you with your washing, spying on you in the laundry room. This has got to stop. That's what he's done. Oh, don't be so ridiculous, Philip. Honestly, you really are ranting now about everything and nothing. Think about things reasonably for a second. Should you attempt to kill this somewhat unorthodox man-like creature, he could become like a cornered dog and lash out if he feels threatened. And God forbid that happens. Things could turn nasty very quickly, let me tell you. And you can't say, Philip, that I haven't warned you on this. And what if the worst were to happen, and the creature actually killed you? That would leave me without a husband and our children without a father. Do you want to do that to them? Do you want to do that to me? Have you thought about any of this for a second? You seem to believe because you carry a weapon on your person that you have the edge over this creature. But you don't. You're deluding yourself on this one. You don't know what you're talking about, Monica. I'm the man of the house. I know exactly what I'm doing. Not like this, Philip, you don't, Monica had insisted. But I'm afraid her words sadly fell on deaf ears. Philip O'Rourke was bloody-minded, opinionated, and wilfully contrary, but I'm quite sure you've gathered as much. If it weren't for him, the O'Rourke family may never have left Clayton Manor in the first place, and I would likely not be telling you this story. But alas, Philip O'Rourke was messing around with something he could not understand. So invariably it did come back to bite him, as Monica had warned. It was because of the consequence of his foolish actions. The O'Rourke family, well, they had their lives turned upside down, and they were forced to leave Clayton Manor against their will. Oh dear, said Marcus. Sounds to me that Philip O'Rourke was taking on something far too sophisticated than he himself was even aware of. Very well put, agreed Edward Kingston. Anyway, on that night when Monica watched Philip O'Rourke heading out into the woodgrove yet again to go after the hairy humanoid, after they'd heard him singing in the woods, Monica was most sure this time that things would not end well. But she was powerless to stop the impulsiveness of her obstinate husband. She was shaking her head sorrowfully as she observed him marching into the woods, and wondered to herself if she'd ever see him again. Philip O'Rourke knocked back a couple of stiff shots of whisky, and then sauntered off into the woods, armed with a rifle and torch. I guess he needed all the Dutch courage he could get, if he intended to take down a huge creature like this, that could so easily snap his neck off as quickly as a piece of peanut brittle. I think poor Monica was all too aware of this unsettling fact. But alas, Philip was heading straight into the danger zone, and he didn't even appear to know it. "Goodness gracious me," said Marcus. "Philip O'Rourke was exceedingly foolish by the sounds of things. Sometimes it's a whole lot more sensible to let things be. I agree with his wife Monica on this. They should have left the hairy creature well alone." Marcus paused for a moment and then said, "Did he find the beast by any chance? I rather suspect that you are going to tell me he did. I hope the story you're telling me doesn't end tragically, but I rather feel that it might, because of the ignorance of a foolhardy man who thought he knew exactly what he was doing, when he clearly did not. Sometimes even a man's vanity can know no bounds." "Well said," Edward Kingston agreed, pausing for breath for a second. "The story did end dramatically, I can say. Well, according to my neighbour Cole Armstrong. He got onto the phone with Philip O'Rourke. Well, actually, it was Philip O'Rourke who called him first, and that was to cancel a card game that they'd planned for the following evening that was going to be held in the library at Clayton Manor. Philip promptly informed Cole that the family had up and left Clayton Manor for good, and would be unlikely to be coming back any time soon. He told Cole Armstrong what had happened to him that night, and he didn't spare him any details. Apparently, when Philip O'Rourke entered the woodgrove that night in search of the creature that he intended to take down and kill, he had a profound sense that he was being watched. He guessed it was the creature watching him. It was an overwhelming feeling knowing something was there, and not being able to physically see it. Philip felt exceedingly frustrated. He absolutely knew the creature was watching him. So he boldly called out, "Quit playing games with me. Where are you? I know you're there." He was about to give up on his hot pursuit of the creature, as it was very difficult to hunt down something you can't physically see with your naked eyes, and everything in the woodgrove was sadly lost in the tenebrific shadows. Very suddenly he heard a voice, and there, standing in front of him, was this hairy, human-like creature. Once again the creature was looking steadily at Philip through his yellow eyes, and spoke to him in a language which, against all the odds, Philip appeared to understand. "Compilasica, ha kila santolo, ham fanasikuana, ha gilanitalo kasachakwa." "You wanted to see me, but your intentions are not good. I see the vindictive malice and vengefulness in your heart that you so obviously hold towards me and those of my kind, and that is not good." The creature shook his head sadly in that moment. Philip O'Rourke tried to fire at him, but he said he was physically disabled from using his rifle. He simply just could not do it. He claimed his arm had incongruously become paralyzed and stiff. His fingers were all but numb. He knew the creature was responsible for doing this to his arm, and he didn't know how this creature had such power over him. He couldn't fight against this power. He claimed he began to shake like a leaf. His heart was in his mouth, and all he wanted to do was flee away from the woods, because he realized in that moment he was no match for this hairy man, and now he was certain the creature intended to kill him, to extract his ultimate revenge. In fact, he didn't just think it, he was certain of it. The creature spoke to him again, and said, "You came here with the intention of killing me. I won't stand for such violence. I meant you and your family no harm, but you have waged war on me and my kind, and that is not acceptable. In the circumstances, I must demand you leave this land at once. You have no place being here, for although you think you are the owner of this place, it all belongs to me. You are the one encroaching on my territory, and not the other way round. I will thank you to go away from here. If you don't obey my demands, I will kill you myself. You have crossed the boundaries of decency and common sense. I never want to see the likes of you in these parts again. If you are not gone by the morning, I will see to it that you have breathed your very last. For it will take nothing for me to kill you. I could snap off your head with my pinky finger without so much as drawing breath. I have seen your kind before, men that carry weapons of war into the woods to kill the wildlife. And alas, these things you use to take down prey are completely powerless to use against me. For I can read your mind, as if you were an open book, so your corrupt, duplicitous plans are easy to detect and to intercept. I can assure you that you are powerless against the likes of me. Katila kwansi, hom fonshani tulo, hikazi zana swasi kun, hilatila bogolona, nasi nakwani. Now go now before I do something I regret, for I am tempted to throttle you, but I am not given to violence. So I will give you the opportunity to go. But if I find you haven't gone by the morning, you will surely live to regret it. So Philip O'Rourke returned home to his wife Monica, in quite the panic, I have to tell you. I am told he had to drink several stiff whiskies before he finally told her what had happened to him in the woods. The creature had spoken to him and told them to leave at once, and he absolutely knew the creature was not toying with him in any way, and that if he didn't leave the manor as soon as possible, the creature would dispose of him, almost as if he was an old piece of garbage rotting in the refrigerator that needed throwing out and was of no earthly good whatsoever. Monica was incensed with her husband, as you would expect. "What did I tell you, Philip? I warned you," she chortled. "I told you not to go doing something you regret. But no, you just never listen, do you? Instead, you go charging like a man possessed into the woods, determined to kill a very powerful, very intimidating creature. And then what happens? You can't even fire at it with your rifle. Why not? I'll tell you why. Because your arm went completely paralyzed. Because the creature had so much power over you. He told you he wanted to live with us in peace and in harmony, and he meant us no harm. But you blew it, didn't you, Philip? You arrogantly, pig-headedly threw caution to the wind. And now your contrary foolhardiness has got us tangled up in this dreadful mess. I'm in no doubt the creature intends to carry out his threats to you. So we have no choice, do we? We have to leave, and we have to move away. And that, I'm afraid, is what we have to do. We haven't got a choice in the matter." And that's exactly what the family did. "Where did they go?" asked Marcus, looking somewhat bemused. "The O'Rourkes had an up-and-coming brownstone apartment in New York. Folks like the O'Rourkes have plenty of properties all over the place, like the wealthy so often do. But I know Monica O'Rourke was absolutely devastated to leave Clayton Manor. She always said the manor had got under her skin. She loved living there, so she felt grievously upset about having to be so unfortunately displaced. So you're saying the family up and left and abandoned Clayton Manor for 20 long years, and now very suddenly I get a job as a groundskeeper there, where I'm now obviously being employed by Philip O'Rourke's son." "It would seem so," said Edward Kingston. It was a while later, when Edward Kingston had dropped off Marcus outside the wrought-iron gates of Clayton Manor. These gates would have been imposing and very grandiose, if they hadn't been tragically obliterated by the deep rust that was aggressively eating its way through the metal, with the feistiness of termites through wood. "Ah, here we are," said Edward, stopping his car very abruptly. "This is Clayton Manor. I told you it was dreadfully run down and derelict. I hope you can get in through the gates. Oh, good, it appears that the gate is not locked. It looks as if it's ajar. I suspect that Zack O'Rourke must have opened the gate for you. Maybe he's waiting for you on the property to advise you on all your duties. I rather think that this might be the case. I don't pity you having to clean the grounds up. It's going to be one hell of an undertaking, let me tell you." So there we are, that's the end of part 3 of our story. Part 4 is tomorrow night, and I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, good night and goodbye.